The explosion tore through the diplomatic hall 3 seconds after Kira finished saying her vows. Her husband, Daniel Carter, grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a marble pillar as plasma fire carved molten streaks across the ceiling. The Zethran ambassador collapsed, his chest smoking. His security detail opened fire on the human delegation. Daniel moved like nothing Kira had ever seen. He seized a fallen guard's weapon, rolled across the floor, and put 3 precise shots into the attackers before they could adjust their aim. His face remained calm, almost empty as he killed them. Kira had married him an hour ago to seal the peace between their worlds. She had expected a diplomat, a politician, maybe a soldier. What she saw now was something else entirely. The wedding had been a formality, a symbol of unity between Earth and the Zethran Collective. Kira was the daughter of the High Command. Daniel was supposed to be a decorated officer turned peace envoy. Neither of them wanted this marriage, but their governments demanded it. The war had lasted 17 years and consumed billions of lives. This union was meant to end it. Now someone had shattered that peace before the ink dried on the treaty. Daniel hauled her to her feet and pulled her toward the service exit. More explosions rocked the building. She heard screaming in 3 different languages. Her wedding dress, pale blue and woven with ceremonial silver thread, tangled around her legs. Daniel ripped the lower half away without asking, then kept moving. They reached the corridor. Bodies littered the floor, human and Zethran alike, all dead. Daniel checked each corpse quickly, taking ammunition and communication devices. His movements were efficient and practiced. Kira realized with cold certainty that he had done this before, many times. A squad of armored figures rounded the corner. Neither human nor Zethran. Their suits bore no markings. Daniel shoved Kira into a doorway and opened fire before they could raise their weapons. The fight lasted 8 seconds. When it ended, all 5 attackers were dead and Daniel had a graze across his shoulder. He barely glanced at the wound. Instead, he activated one of the stolen communication devices and listened. His expression darkened. "They hit every delegation site simultaneously," he said. His voice was steady, almost conversational. Earth, Zethros, and 3 neutral worlds. Whoever planned this wanted the war to restart. Kira felt her blood turn cold. Her people would blame Earth. Earth would blame the collective. Everything they had worked for, everything they had sacrificed, would collapse into violence again. "We need to get to the command center," she said. "If I can reach my father, if you can reach your superiors." Daniel cut her off. "The command center is the first place they'll expect us to go. We need to disappear and figure out who's behind this." "Disappear? I'm the daughter of the High Command. I'm exactly what they need me to be," Daniel interrupted. His eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw something in them. Not warmth, but acknowledgement. "You married a weapon, Kira. Now let me do what weapons do best." He moved down the corridor and she followed. Behind them, the diplomatic complex burned. Ahead, somewhere in the smoke and chaos, their enemies waited. Kira had studied Daniel's file before the ceremony. Decorated officer, yes. Peace envoy, supposedly. But his military record had gaps, long stretches where no information existed. She had assumed those were classified operations, routine black ops work. Looking at him now, watching how he moved through violence like a man walking through his own home, she realized the truth. Daniel Carter was not a soldier who had become a diplomat. He was something Earth had built and polished and aimed at its enemies. They had wrapped him in a suit and called him civilized, but underneath he remained what he had always been, a weapon that looked like a man. And she had just married him. The building shook with another explosion. Daniel pulled her into a stairwell and they descended into darkness. Above them, she heard boots on metal, voices shouting orders. The hunters were closing in. Daniel checked his stolen weapon and smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Stay close," he said. "This is going to get worse before it gets better." Kira followed her husband into the dark, wondering what kind of war she had just become part of. The maintenance tunnels beneath the diplomatic complex were never meant for combat, but Daniel navigated them like he had memorized the blueprints. Kira struggled to keep pace as he moved through the narrow passages, pausing at each junction to listen before continuing. Emergency lighting cast everything in shades of red. "How do you know where you're going?" she asked. "I studied the layout before the ceremony." He didn't look back at her. Standard procedure. For a wedding? For any operation. That word stung. Operation. Not ceremony, not celebration. To Daniel, their marriage had been just another mission parameter, another piece of tactical data to process and file away. Kira had known the union was political, but some part of her had hoped for at least a pretense of humanity from the man she would spend her life beside. They reached a junction where 3 tunnels met. Daniel held up a hand for silence and crouched low. Footsteps echoed from somewhere ahead, multiple sets moving in formation. Professional soldiers, not panicked civilians. Daniel gestured for Kira to move behind him, then aimed his weapon at the central tunnel. The footsteps grew louder. Kira held her breath. 3 figures emerged, weapons raised. They wore the dark armor of the unmarked soldiers from earlier. Daniel fired twice, dropping the first 2 before they could react. The third managed to get a shot off, plasma scoring the wall inches from Daniel's head before Daniel's third shot punched through the soldier's faceplate. The fight had taken perhaps 4 seconds. Daniel moved forward to examine the bodies. He pulled off one soldier's helmet and studied the face beneath. The dead man was human, but his features had been surgically altered to appear more generic, harder to identify. Professional work. Mercenaries, Daniel said. Expensive ones. Someone with serious resources wanted this to happen. Kira knelt beside one of the bodies and found a small device attached to the armor. She recognized it immediately, a collective tactical communicator. Military grade. They're using our equipment and carrying human weapons with filed-off serial numbers. Daniel held up one of the rifles. Whoever hired them made sure both sides would have evidence pointing at each other. A sound from behind made them both turn. A group of Zethran civilians huddled at the far end of the tunnel, eyes wide with fear. Kira recognized one of them, a junior diplomat named Vex who had attended the ceremony. "Ambassador Kira," Vex said, his voice shaking. "Is it true? Did the humans attack?" "No," Kira said firmly. "This is a false flag operation. Someone wants us to think there are human soldiers upstairs killing everyone." Another Zethran interrupted, his face contorted with rage. "I saw them. They wore Earth military uniforms." Daniel stepped forward, and the Zethrans recoiled. Kira realized how he must look to them. A human male, blood on his clothes, holding a weapon, standing over dead bodies. The fact that he had saved her life wouldn't matter. All they would see was an enemy. "Listen carefully," Daniel said, his voice cold and precise. "In approximately 90 seconds, another squad will come through that tunnel behind you. They will kill all of you and make it look like I did it. If you want to live, you will move into the side passage on your left and stay quiet until I tell you otherwise." "Why should we trust you?" Vex demanded. "Because I'm the only person here with a gun who hasn't tried to kill you yet." Daniel's expression didn't change. "Now move." The civilians hesitated. Kira stepped forward, placing herself between Daniel and the Zethrans. "Do what he says. Please, I'll explain everything later, but right now we need to move." Her position as the High Commander's daughter carried weight. The Zethrans moved reluctantly into the side passage. Daniel positioned himself at the junction and waited. 70 seconds later, exactly as he had predicted, another squad of armored soldiers appeared. These wore Earth military uniforms, though Kira suspected they were more mercenaries. Daniel let them advance into the kill zone before opening fire. The fight was brutal and short. Daniel used the confined space to his advantage, forcing the soldiers into a bottleneck where their numbers meant nothing. He moved between cover points with inhuman speed, each shot placed with surgical precision. When one soldier tried to flank him, Daniel grabbed the man's weapon, twisted it around, and shot. 2 other soldiers before breaking the first soldier's neck with a sharp motion. Kira had seen combat footage before. This was different. Daniel fought like violence was a language he spoke fluently, every movement economical and purposeful. There was no hesitation, no wasted motion, no fear, just cold, mechanical efficiency. When the last soldier fell, Daniel reloaded calmly and checked the bodies. One was still alive, gasping behind a cracked faceplate. Daniel knelt beside him and pulled the helmet off. The soldier was young, maybe 20, with Earth military tattoos on his neck. Real ones, not surgical additions. Daniel pressed his weapon against the man's chest. "Who hired you?" Daniel asked. The soldier coughed blood. "Go to hell." "Already been there." "Who?" "Hired you. Your Earth military, you should know." The soldier laughed, then screamed as Daniel pressed harder on a wound in his side. "The contract came through back channels. Payment in collective currency. That's all I know." Daniel studied the soldier's face for a long moment, then shot him through the heart, quick and clean. Mercy, Kira supposed, though it looked like simple efficiency. The Zethran civilians emerged from their hiding place. They stared at the carnage, at Daniel standing in the middle of it, and Kira saw the fear in their eyes intensify. Bex looked at her with something approaching betrayal. "That's your husband?" Bex whispered. "That's what you married for peace?" Kira had no answer. She looked at Daniel, at the bodies surrounding him, at the complete absence of emotion on his face. He checked his weapon's ammunition counter and started moving again, expecting her to follow. She did, because what else could she do? The marriage contract was irrevocable under both Earth and collective law. She was bound to this man, this weapon wrapped in human skin, for the rest of her life. They moved deeper into the tunnels, the civilians following at a distance. Daniel led them away from the sounds of fighting, navigating by some internal map Kira couldn't fathom. After 15 minutes, they reached a heavy security door that should have required high-level clearance to open. Daniel produced a small device from his pocket and attached it to the lock. The door opened with a hiss. "How did you—" Kira started. "I told you. I studied the layout." Daniel entered first, weapon ready. The room beyond was a communications hub, filled with equipment and displays. Several technicians lay dead at their stations. Daniel moved to the main console and began typing. Kira watched over his shoulder as he bypassed security protocols with practiced ease, accessing systems that should have been impossible to breach. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Finding out who wants us dead." His fingers moved across the interface with machine-like speed. Data streamed across the screens, communications logs and financial transactions and deployment orders. Kira scanned the information and felt her blood run cold. The attack had been coordinated across multiple star systems simultaneously. Hundreds of mercenary teams, all paid through elaborate shell corporations. The money trail was deliberately tangled, designed to implicate both Earth and the collective. But Daniel was unraveling it with terrifying speed. "There," he said, pointing to a series of transactions. 3 corporations, all owned by the same holding company. And that holding company is registered in the Varan system. Kira's breath caught. The Varan system was neutral territory, a collection of independent colony worlds that had stayed out of the war. They had no reason to want the conflict to continue, unless they did. "The war economy," she said slowly. "Varan made fortunes supplying both sides. If the fighting stops, their profits disappear." Daniel pulled up more data. "Look at the timing. They started planning this 6 months ago, right when peace talks became serious. This wasn't a reactionary attack. It was a calculated business decision." The casual way he said it made Kira's skin crawl. To Daniel, this was just analysis, just data points to process. Billions of lives hung in the balance, and he discussed it like a logistics problem. Vex had entered the room with the other civilians. He stared at the screens, comprehension dawning. "They're going to restart the war. Everyone will think the other side betrayed them. Not if we expose them first," Kira said. She turned to Daniel. "We need to get this information to our governments. If we can prove Varan orchestrated the attacks, No one will believe it. Daniel shut down the console and started wiping the access logs. Both sides are too angry, too ready to blame each other. By the time anyone listens to evidence, fleets will be mobilizing. We have maybe 12 hours before this turns into open warfare again. Then what do you suggest? Kira demanded. Daniel turned to face her, and for the first time since the ceremony, she saw something other than cold efficiency in his eyes. It wasn't warmth or compassion, it was the look of a predator deciding how to kill its prey. We go to Varen, he said. We find the people responsible, and we make sure they can't profit from this war anymore. You mean assassination? I mean problem solving. Kira looked at the screens, at the data proving a massive conspiracy, at the bodies of the technicians who had probably been killed to hide this very information. She thought about her father, about the high command, about all the military officers on both sides who were probably already demanding retaliation. She thought about 17 years of war, about the billions who had died, about the billions more who would die if the fighting started again. Then she looked at Daniel, at the weapon she had married. How do we get to Varen? She asked. Daniel smiled. It was a terrible smile. I know a pilot. The industrial sector of the diplomatic complex housed the shuttle bay's massive hangars where ships from 100 worlds docked. Daniel led their group through service corridors that bypassed the main security checkpoints. Twice they encountered mercenary patrols. Twice Daniel killed them with brutal efficiency, never using more than 3 shots per target. The Zethran civilians had stopped flinching. They simply followed, numb with shock and fear. Kira walked beside her husband, watching him work, trying to reconcile the man who had stood beside her at the altar with the killer moving through these corridors. They reached a maintenance airlock. Daniel overrode the security, and they entered a massive hangar filled with ships. Most were diplomatic vessels, sleek and ceremonial. But at the far end sat a battered cargo hauler, its hull scarred from atmospheric entry burns. That's our ride? Vex asked skeptically. That's the ship of the only pilot crazy enough to fly us into Varen space right now. Daniel started across the hangar floor. Her name is Kate Morrison. She owes me a favor. What kind of favor? Kira asked. The kind where I didn't kill her when I was supposed to. Before Kira could process that statement, someone shouted behind them. A squad of actual Earth military soldiers, not mercenaries, poured into the hangar. They wore proper uniforms with rank insignia and unit patches. Real troops probably sent to secure the area. Freeze, their commander shouted. Drop your weapons. Daniel kept walking toward the cargo hauler. The soldiers raised their rifles. I said freeze! The commander's voice went up an octave. Carter, is that you? Daniel stopped and turned slowly. His face showed the first real emotion Kira had seen since the ceremony. Not fear or anger, recognition, and something that might have been regret. Lieutenant Brady, Daniel said quietly, this is not what it looks like. Brady's face had gone pale. He stared at Daniel like he was seeing a ghost. You're supposed to be retired. They told us you were done. What the hell are you doing here? My job. Daniel's voice was flat. Stand down, Lieutenant. You don't want to do this. There are dead bodies all over this complex. Human bodies. Brady's rifle trembled in his hands. The ambassador is dead. They're saying you went rogue, that you killed him. The ambassador was killed by mercenaries paid to restart the war. I'm trying to stop it. Daniel took a step forward. You know me, Brady. You served under me on Titan Station. I don't go rogue. I complete missions. Then surrender. Come in. Explain what happened. Command will sort it out. There's no time. Another step. In 10 hours, both fleets are going to open fire. Millions will die. I need to get to Varen and stop the people responsible. Brady's face twisted with conflict. His soldiers looked at him, waiting for orders. Kira could see the calculation happening, the weight of loyalty against duty, training against trust. Sir, we need to decide, one of Brady's soldiers said. Brady closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he lowered his rifle slightly. You've got 5 minutes before I report this. After that, I come after you with everything I've got. Fair enough. Daniel turned back toward the cargo hauler. Tell Command I'm sorry about the mess. They ran the rest of the way. The cargo hauler's loading ramp descended as they approached, and a woman appeared at the top. She was in her 40s with short gray hair and the weathered face of someone who'd spent too much time in space. Carter, she said, unsurprised. I heard explosions and figured you'd show up eventually. What's the job? Varen, fast and quiet. Kate whistled. That's expensive. Bill Earth Command. Tell them it's a special operations requisition under my old authorization codes. Those codes expired 3 years ago. They'll work. They always work. Daniel ushered the civilians up the ramp. Kira followed, looking back to see Brady and his squad still standing in the hangar, weapons lowered, watching them leave. The cargo hauler's interior was cramped and utilitarian. Kate started the pre-flight sequence while Daniel secured the civilians in the passenger compartment. Kira stood in the cockpit doorway trying to process everything. He let you go, she said. That soldier? Why? Because he knows what I am. Daniel checked the ship's weapons systems, such as they were, and he knows I don't waste time on pointless operations. What are you? The question came out before Kira could stop it. You're not just a soldier. That lieutenant, he looked at you like you were something else entirely. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. The ship shuddered as Kate lifted off. Through the viewport, Kira could see the diplomatic complex falling away beneath them, smoke rising from a dozen fires. I was part of a program, Daniel finally said. Earth military, black budget, no official records. They took soldiers with certain aptitudes and trained us for deep cover operations behind enemy lines. Psychological conditioning, tactical enhancement, the works, made us into perfect weapons. How many of you were there? Started with 300. Last I heard, 47 were still alive. Most died in the field. Some couldn't handle what they'd become and ate their guns. A few went actually rogue and had to be eliminated. Kate spoke up from the pilot's seat. You're not telling her the best part, Carter. Shut up, Kate. No, she married you. She deserves to know. Kate glanced back at Kira. The program had a 98% mission success rate. Want to know why? Because the operators didn't just kill targets, they became them. Infiltrated, integrated, sometimes for years. Then, when the time came, they eliminated entire command structures from the inside. Daniel here, he's personally responsible for the deaths of 7 collective admirals, 12 governors, and probably a few hundred other high-value targets. The ship lurched as they cleared the atmosphere. Kira grabbed a support rail, her stomach twisting with more than just acceleration. You killed my people, she said slowly. For years during the war, you murdered them. Yes, Daniel didn't look away. That was my job. And now you're married to me, the daughter of the High Commander. Was that part of the mission too? Get close to the leadership? No. For the first time, Daniel's voice held something other than mechanical precision. The program was shut down 3 years ago. I really am retired. The marriage was supposed to be symbolic, nothing more. I was supposed to shake hands and smile for cameras and help sell the peace to both populations, but you're still a weapon. Yes, that doesn't change. Can't be untrained, can't be undone. I'm what they made me. He met her eyes. But I'm trying to save the peace, not destroy it. That should count for something. Kira wanted to hate him, wanted to be horrified, disgusted, anything other than what she actually felt, which was a cold, creeping understanding. Daniel Carter was a monster, yes, but he was a monster pointed at their enemies, and right now their enemies were the people trying to restart the war. The pilot said you were supposed to kill her, Kira said. Why didn't you? Kate laughed. Because I figured out what he was 3 days before he was supposed to complete his mission. Caught him breaking into my ship's computer systems. So I made him a deal. I wouldn't blow his cover if he wouldn't kill me. We'd both just walk away and forget we ever met. She also provided me with intelligence that helped take down a supply network, Daniel added. Made her more valuable alive than dead. Always knew how to appeal to your practical side, Carter. Kate plotted a course around a debris field. We're clear of local space. 3 days to Barren at maximum burn. You want to tell me what we're really doing there? Daniel pulled up the data he'd retrieved from the communications hub and showed it to Kate. She studied it while flying, her expression darkening. Corporate conspiracy to restart the war, she summarized. Cute. So we're going to expose them. We're going to remove them from the equation entirely, Daniel said. You mean assassinate them? I mean ensure they can't profit from human suffering anymore. Kate was quiet for a moment. Then she shrugged. I've killed for worse reasons. This actually sounds almost noble. Count me in. Kira found herself sitting on the floor of the cramped cockpit, her ruined wedding dress pooling around her. She had married a killer. She was flying toward an assassination mission with him, and somehow, impossibly, she was starting to understand why this might be necessary. How many will you have to kill, she asked. 7 board members, 2 security chiefs, probably a dozen guards, Daniel said without hesitation, maybe more depending on what security they've arranged. And if you succeed, if you kill them all and expose the conspiracy, then maybe Earth and the collective will actually believe the evidence? Maybe they'll pull back from the brink. Maybe the peace will hold. Daniel checked his weapons. Or maybe it won't matter and the war starts anyway, but at least we'll have tried. Thex appeared in the cockpit doorway. The young Zethran diplomat looked haggard, his ceremonial robes stained with dust and blood. Ambassador Kira, the others are asking what happens next. They're frightened. Tell them we're going somewhere safe, Kira said, though she wasn't sure safe existed anymore. After Vex left, Daniel spoke again. You can still walk away. When we reach Barren, you can take the civilians to the local authorities, claim asylum, contact your father, go home. And leave you to commit mass murder alone? It's what I do, what I am. Kira looked at her husband, at the man she'd married to symbolize peace. A weapon wrapped in human skin, built to kill efficiently and without remorse. The galaxy's worst nightmare made flesh, and he was trying to save millions of lives. No, she said quietly, I married you for peace. I'll see this through? Daniel nodded once, accepting her decision without comment. He settled into a maintenance routine, checking weapons and equipment with methodical care. Kate glanced back at them and smiled grimly. Hell of a honeymoon, you two. Kira almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she closed her eyes and tried to rest as the ship hurtled through the void toward whatever waited in barren space. 3 days, she thought. 3 days until they would either save the peace or doom billions. 3 days with the monster she had married. The Varan system was a collection of 17 terraformed moons orbiting a massive gas giant. Each moon had been transformed into an independent colony, and together they formed a loose confederation that stayed scrupulously neutral in galactic conflicts, which made them perfect for corporations that wanted to operate without oversight. Kate brought the cargo hauler in on a commercial approach vector, just another freight ship among thousands. The system's security was relaxed, focused more on preventing smuggling than military threats. They docked at Varan Prime, the largest moon, without incident. Daniel had spent the 3-day journey preparing. He'd fabricated false identities for all of them using Kate's impressive collection of forged documents. The Zethran civilians would pose as refugee workers seeking employment. Kira would be his wife, which had the advantage of being technically true. Kate would be their broker, arranging their passage to other systems. The target is here, Daniel said, pulling up a holographic display. It showed a massive corporate tower in Varan Prime's capital city. Axiom Holdings, 47th floor, that's where the board meets. Security? Kate asked. Private military contractors, latest generation combat drones, biometric access controls at every checkpoint. Daniel zoomed in on the building's layout. 17 different ways they can lock down the structure in an emergency. Once we start, we'll have maybe 6 minutes before the entire building becomes a fortress. 6 minutes to kill 7 board members and 2 security chiefs, Kira said. Across multiple floors of a secure building? That's impossible. No, it's just difficult. Daniel highlighted several points on the display. We don't fight our way up. We start at the top and work down. How do we get to the top? Daniel smiled his terrible smile. We use the front door. The plan was insane. Daniel's false identity claimed he was a weapons broker from a neutral system, offering cutting-edge military technology to Axiom's board. Kate had backdated enough transactions and communications to make the identity convincing. They'd requested a meeting, citing time-sensitive intelligence about Earth's new weapon systems. Axiom had taken the bait. They had a meeting scheduled for that afternoon. They're going to scan you, Kate warned. Everything. Retinal, DNA, the works. I know. Daniel was already preparing injecting something into his arm that would alter his biometric readings temporarily. The false identity will hold up. I've done this before. They left the Zethran civilians on the ship with instructions to run if things went wrong. Vex protested, but Kira shut him down with a look. These people had been through enough. The three of them took a transport into the city. Baron Prime was beautiful in a sterile corporate way. Towering arcologies rose above meticulously planned streets. Everything was clean, efficient, prosperous. Built on the profits of 17 years of war. The Axiom building dominated the skyline, a spire of dark glass and steel. They entered through the main lobby, which was all polished marble and flowing water features. Security was visible but not oppressive. Guards in crisp uniforms, scanner gates that looked decorative but weren't. Daniel walked through the security checkpoint without hesitation. The scanners went green. Kate and Kira followed, their false identities equally solid. A corporate liaison met them, a young man with an artificial smile and expensive suit. Peterson, welcome to Axiom. The board is eager to hear your proposal. They rode an express elevator to the 47th floor. The liaison made small talk about the weather, about Varen's growth prospects, about how the pending peace was creating new market opportunities. Kira wanted to strangle him. The elevator opened onto a corridor of executive luxury. Art that cost more than a warship lined the walls. Through windows, the city sprawled below, gleaming and vast. The boardroom was at the end of a hall. Two guards flanked the door, alert but not expecting trouble. Why would they? This was Varen Prime, the safest place in the galaxy. Daniel activated the weapon he'd smuggled in through the security scanners. Not a gun, which would have been detected. Something much simpler, a neural disruptor disguised as a medical implant, powerful enough to disable anyone within 3 meters. Both guards collapsed. Daniel caught one before he hit the floor, easing him down quietly. Kate caught the other. That's our 6 minutes starting now, Daniel said. He opened the boardroom door. 7 people sat around an oval table, expensive drinks in hand, discussing quarterly projections. They looked up in surprise as Daniel entered, surprise that turned to confusion, then alarm as he raised his weapon. "Who the hell are you?" demanded a woman at the head of the table. "Someone who doesn't appreciate being made into a war profiteer's tool," Daniel said. Then he started shooting. Kira had thought she'd seen Daniel fight. In the diplomatic complex, in the tunnels, moving with cold efficiency through mercenaries and soldiers. But this was different. This was him unleashed in a controlled environment, moving faster than seemed possible, each shot perfectly placed. The first 3 board members died before they could stand. The 4th tried to run and made it 2 steps. The 5th had time to scream before the bullet caught her throat. The 6th and 7th threw themselves behind chairs that offered no protection. 10 seconds. That's how long it took for Daniel to kill 7 people. The security chiefs burst through a side door, weapons drawn. Daniel moved like liquid, diving behind the conference table, coming up in a new position, firing twice. Both chiefs went down. Alarms began wailing. 3 minutes left, Kate said from the doorway, her own weapon covering the corridor. Daniel was already at the computer terminal, downloading everything. Financial records, communications, operational plans. All the proof they needed that Axiom had orchestrated the attacks on the diplomatic complexes. The building's security AI activated, trying to seal the floor. Kate shot out the door controls before they could engage. Footsteps thundered in the stairwells. Combat drones would be launching from the building's security hub. Daniel grabbed the data chip and moved. They ran back to the elevator, but it was already locked down. The stairwell was their only option. "Down fast," Daniel ordered. They descended at a sprint. Daniel in front, Kate bringing up the rear, Kira in the middle. Guards appeared above them, firing down into the stairwell. Daniel returned fire without breaking stride, each shot placed with mechanical precision. They made it down 3 floors before the first combat drone found them. It came through a window in an explosion of glass, weapons spinning up. Daniel threw Kira aside and emptied his weapon into the drone's sensor cluster. It crashed into the stairwell wall and exploded. 2 minutes, Kate shouted. They kept moving. More drones, more guards. Daniel killed them all with terrifying efficiency, never hesitating, never missing. Kira realized he'd done this before, probably dozens of times. Infiltrated, eliminated, escaped. This was just another mission to him. They reached the lobby level. The security gates had locked down, but Kate had planted explosive charges during their entry. She triggered them now, blowing a hole in the main entrance. They ran through smoke and alarms into the street. Civilians scattered, screaming. Police forces were already mobilizing, but they were moving toward the building, not the fleeing figures disappearing into the crowd. 60 seconds left on Daniel's mental timer when they reached a pre-positioned vehicle Kate had arranged. They jumped in and Kate gunned the accelerator, merging into traffic with practiced ease. Behind them, the Axiom building was in lockdown. Emergency services swarmed the entrance. News drones circled overhead, broadcasting live footage of the chaos. Daniel activated a secure communication channel and uploaded the stolen data to every major news network in the galaxy simultaneously. Financial proof of Axiom's conspiracy, communications with the mercenary teams, detailed plans for restarting the war, everything. That's going to cause some waves, Kate observed. That's the point. Daniel checked the news feeds on his handheld device. Already, reporters were beginning to connect the dots. The diplomatic attacks, the false flag operations, the money trail leading back to Varan. Kira watched the footage of the Axiom building. 9 people dead. 9 more names on Daniel's tally. She should feel something. Horror, disgust, grief. Instead, she felt numb. Did we just save the peace? She asked. Maybe. Daniel was already planning their extraction from Varan. Or maybe we just bought some time. Hard to say. They made it back to the ship without incident. The Zethron civilians looked at them with wide eyes, taking in the blood spatter on their clothes, the weapons they carried, the cold efficiency of their movements. Kate got them off Varan Prime within the hour, before local authorities could lock down the system. As they cleared the gravity well and engaged the faster-than-light drive, Kira finally allowed herself to collapse into a seat. Daniel sat beside her, cleaning his weapons with methodical care. Even now, covered in blood, he looked calm, almost peaceful. 9 people, Kira said quietly. You killed 9 people today. Yes. Does it bother you? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I remember all of them. Every person I've ever killed. Their faces, how they died, what they said if they had time to speak. It's part of the conditioning we don't get to forget. Then how do you live with it? By making sure I only kill people who need killing. He looked at her. Those 9 people were going to restart a war that would have killed billions. The math is simple, but you're the one who has to do the killing. You're the one who carries all those faces. Someone has to. He went back to cleaning his weapons. Might as well be someone who's already damned. Kira understood then. Daniel Carter wasn't a monster pretending to be human. He was a human who'd been turned into a monster for a purpose, and he carried that burden with grim acceptance because refusing it would mean letting others die. She had married him for peace. Now she understood what that peace had cost. The news feeds exploded over the next 24 hours. Axiom's conspiracy dominated every channel. Governments scrambled to verify the evidence Daniel had released. Earth and the Collective both pulled their fleets back from the brink, too shocked and angry at being manipulated to resume hostilities. The peace held. Kate set course for neutral space where they could all disappear for a while. The Zethron civilians would be relocated, given new identities, compensated for their trauma. Earth and the Collective would both want to question them eventually, but that could wait. Kira found Daniel on the cargo hauler's small observation deck, watching stars streak past in faster-than-light transit. He looked tired for the first time since she'd met him, the mask of efficiency finally cracking. "I contacted my father," she said. "Told him what happened. He wants us to come home. Both of us." She sat beside him. "The thing is, I don't know if we can go home. You're a wanted man on a dozen worlds. I'm married to you, which makes me complicit. And even if they pardon us, even if we're heroes who saved the peace, people will always know what you are." "What I am is a weapon that stopped being useful," Daniel said. "The program was shut down because the war was ending. Earth doesn't need assassins anymore. They need diplomats and builders and people who can smile for cameras. You're still my husband." A marriage of political convenience that served its purpose. You can get it annulled. No one would blame you. Kira thought about that. About walking away from this man, this weapon, this killer who had saved billions of lives. About returning to her old existence as the High Commander's daughter, playing politics, pretending the past weeks hadn't changed her. "No," she said finally. "I don't think I can." Daniel looked at her, surprised for perhaps the first time. "Why not?" "Because I've seen what you really are, and it's not just a weapon. It's someone who remembers every face, someone who carries the weight of all that death so others don't have to. Someone who could have walked away from this conspiracy but chose to risk everything to stop it. That's just programming, the conditioning. Maybe the fact that you think that's all it is proves you're more human than you believe." She took his hand. "I married you for peace, Daniel Carter, but I'm staying married to you because I choose to. Because I think under all that training and conditioning and trauma, there's a man worth knowing. And because someone needs to remind you that you're more than what they made you." Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, carefully, he squeezed her hand back. "I'm not good at this," he said. "Being human. Having relationships. All of that was trained out of me. Then we'll figure it out together." Kira smiled. "We've got time now. The war's over. Maybe we can find some corner of the galaxy where no one knows our names and just exist for a while." "That sounds nice." Daniel's voice was soft, almost vulnerable. "I've never just existed before." They sat together on the observation deck as the ship carried them toward an uncertain future. Behind them, two civilizations pulled back from war, saved by the actions of a weapon and the woman who chose to see the human underneath. Ahead, somewhere in the vast dark of space, lay the possibility of peace. Not just between Earth and the Collective, but between a killer and his conscience, between what Daniel had been made to be and what he might yet become. Kira looked at her husband, at the man she'd watched wage war like a fallen star, burning through his enemies with terrible purpose. She thought about the vows they'd spoken, about the explosion that had followed, about everything that had led them here. For Truce, she had wed a human. For love, she would help him learn to be one again. The stars streamed past, cold and distant and beautiful. And for the first time in 17 years, the galaxy was at peace.